This is the new Hyundai Crater concept car, and just look at it. This is so cool. Hyundai has given us a lot of practical vehicles, sedans, crossovers, stuff that gets us to work. But this is totally different. Right now, it's just a concept, but I wouldn't be surprised if it previews something coming in the future for production. But for today, I'm going to show you all of the quirks and features of the Crater.
Before we get started, are you ready for your next cool car? Sell your enthusiast car on Cars and Bids. Trading in your car to dealers means you aren't getting market value for your car, leaving you with less cash for your next fun car. Just look at our recent sales of these cool cars compared to current trade-in value. This is a trade-in offer, and this was the Cars and Bids result. This is a trade-in offer, and this was the Cars and Bids result. This is the trade-in offer, and this is the Cars and Bids result. Get started now on carsandbids.com. Sell on Cars and Bids and join the best community to sell your enthusiast car.
All right, time for the quirks and features of the Crater, starting with an explanation of what this is. As you can see, an off-road SUV, not just a regular old crossover, but very much geared toward getting off the pavement and real capability. But for now, it's just a concept car. Now, I say for now because the truth is a lot of other automakers already have vehicles like this that have been massively successful. The Jeep Wrangler, the Toyota 4Runner, the new Ford Bronco, and a lot of others. So it makes sense that Hyundai is testing the waters in this segment with a concept car, particularly because they've recently launched their off-road oriented XRT brand with some off-roady XRT versions of other vehicles. And so it makes sense that XRT would kind of craft a real off-roader to take on some real off-roader rivals. Again, not ready for production yet, but we can hope. So let's talk quirks, starting with the exterior, which you can see very muscly, very aggressive, very off-roady, and in fact, the entire exterior look was designed here in California. Now, Hyundai issued a press release for the Crater that said the design for this vehicle began with the question, what would freedom look like? And apparently, that's this, the sculpted, off-roady, muscly, aggressive concept car that you see here. In fact, Hyundai told me the goal for the Crater was to make the exterior design, the style, look like steel. So that meant like both really tough and unbreakable, but also kind of sculpted in some of the ways that you see steel. And frankly, I think they've done exactly that. It looks very tough and very steel-like. To me, you especially see that design philosophy come through on the fenders, which are really cool. They're these pronounced wide body fenders that really make this thing look like a serious off-road vehicle, and there's no like flowing curves here. They stick out, they're angular, they're cool. And speaking of angles, you'll notice the approach angle up front is really what you'd expect from an off-road vehicle. The wheels are at the corners, there's not much space up there, and it tilts up quickly so you can clear obstacles. Same deal in back. Again, wheels near the back, and you have a really good departure angle back here, which is exactly what you'd expect to see from an off-roader. Now, a lot of this is made possible by the 33-inch all-terrain tires, which are pretty serious for a Hyundai. You don't usually think of Hyundais and big tires, but that's exactly the situation here, and it makes sense. It's kind of a perfect fit for the overall design and the capabilities of the Crater. More interesting to me, though, is the wheels, 18-inch wheels, which Hyundai says are inspired by envisioning a hexagonal asteroid impacting a sheer metal landscape, leaving a crater in its aftermath. That sounds ridiculous, but unbelievably, I actually kind of think that's what it looks like. It looks like a crater smashed into metal, and that's the wheel design, and it actually pretty much works and definitely corresponds to the overall exterior design of the vehicle. Also worth noting, on the outside in this vicinity, you can see the digital camouflage on the exterior surfaces. You have the body and then you have the digital camo above the wheels and kind of going to the front bumper and to the back bumper. Exterior camouflage, not exactly my favorite thing, but it definitely does help to emphasize kind of the capabilities and the toughness of the Crater. But beyond the overall look and some of the general design elements, there are a lot of interesting quirks and features of the Crater as you go closer, and we begin with the welcome sequence. You walk up to the car and the lights do a little show, as you can see. That's not particularly uncommon. A lot of cars have that these days, but some unusual elements here. For one thing, there is a sound component as well welcoming you to the car. Take a listen. And just in case you didn't catch it, the auxiliary lights on the roof have their own little interesting quirk, which is they turn into animated smiley faces as you walk up to the car as part of the welcome sequence, and they sort of go up and down as smiley faces on the top. The designer of this car told me they want people to be happy when walking up to the car, and so how better to do that than be greeted by smiley faces on the roof? I suppose that makes sense. Now, speaking of lighting, you'll notice that those smiley faces are inside of pixelated lighting, which is kind of a theme of some newer Hyundai vehicles. You also have lighting pixels up front. You can see the entire headlight kind of running light situation up front is a bunch of pixels like we've seen on Ioniq 5 and other Hyundai models. And same deal in back. You can see the taillights, a lot of pixels back there, just like you'd expect from some of the newer Hyundai models. Interestingly, you also have a pixelated lighting element on the roof rack. You can see right up here on the back of the roof rack, and Hyundai told me the intent here is this isn't a driving light, but instead you would turn it on to illuminate around the car when you're stopped. Like if you're at a campsite, it's dark, you're trying to see where to set up your tent, you can turn on the pixelated light on the roof rack and do just that, which is a pretty cool idea. An even cooler idea is right here, where you normally have your rear view mirror. Here you have something very different. You can see on the front, you get more pixels for another lighting element for the car, and on the back you have a camera lens because this is your rear view mirror. It's a camera that projects inside the car. I will show you that in a second. But the most interesting part of this piece is that it's detachable. And Hyundai tells me the theory with this piece is you can use the front part of it as a flashlight, a detachable flashlight, so you can go into the forest and do whatever. And when it detaches, the thinking is you can use the back part as a camera, so it's almost like a GoPro. When you get where you're going, you don't need your mirror cameras anymore. You take them off and you can film with the camera and actually record something at your destination using your rear view mirror camera, which is a pretty cool idea. And of course, there's more. Up front here, you can see these wire pieces that go from basically the hood up to the roof of the car. These are called limb risers, and they're used by very serious off-roaders who off-road in dense brush to kind of clear the brush away from the vehicle as you're driving so it doesn't impact the windshield. They come on this car and contribute to its off-roader aggressive look. Up here you also have a massive skid plate. You can see, again, it has a steel look to it. It looks very tough, kind of curls under the vehicle, of course, like any skid plate to protect anything under there when you're off-roading on serious surfaces. And up here, you will also notice your front recovery hooks. They're sort of this copper orange. They can help you pull out somebody who's stuck, or you can get pulled out. But the interesting thing is, over on the driver's side, the recovery hook is actually a bottle opener in addition to being a recovery hook. So you're parked at your campsite, you can't find a bottle opener, you always have one handy on your Hyundai Crater so you can open up a bottle, which is a pretty neat idea. And speaking of the front recovery hook bottle opener, it's about this time in the video when I should introduce you to Crater Man. Crater Man is sort of the unofficial concept car mascot for this vehicle, and he looks like this. Here he is on a little decal that shows kind of Crater Man's look. He has kind of a tough, square, rather distinctive look to him. And again, like I said, he's the mascot of this car, and he appears in many places places hidden throughout the vehicle, like on that front recovery hook bottle opener. You can see there's Crater Man, and he shows up in other spots too. On the base of the windshield, you can see Crater Man makes an appearance once again. You also have Crater Man right here on the side of the roof rack, and you have Crater Man on the third brake light in back at the very top. Another instance of the Crater Man mascot making an appearance on this vehicle. And he's hidden in a lot of other places too, specifically on the inside. So, well, let's go in there. Okay, so the Crater's interior begins with the doors, which you can see the front door opens normally. The rear door is rear hinged, like in the old school Toyota FJ Cruiser. And the opening sequence, at least for the concept car, it's electronic and maybe a little slow, but the idea is pretty cool. Now you can see when the doors are open on both sides of the car, it feels very, well, open. You have a very large area that is completely open with no pillar obstructing it in between. It's kind of a cool look and feel having everything open in this car. And once the doors open, you begin to notice a few things right away, starting with the running boards. You can see down here where you climb into the car, it's got this sort of terrain pattern motif on the side because, well, you're climbing on it, it's terrain, and it makes sense that it's printed there. Another obvious thing you see the moment the doors open up is a massive interior roll cage that basically spans the entire interior, from the windshield frame all the way down through the sides, the back of the car, a complete full interior roll cage like you'd see in a rally car. Whether or not the Crater makes production, the interior roll cage will certainly never make production, but it's fun to dream of such a thing, and it provides a lot of different grab handles you can grab onto while you're doing serious off-roading, in addition to enhancing your safety. And in fact, one cool quirk of the roll cage, you look in the back and you can see positioned on the side there are little handprints, one kind of down below and one a little higher. Hyundai told me the theory here is this gives children climbing into the Crater an idea of where they can put their hands in order to lift themselves up and get inside, which is kind of cute. But anyway, other things you notice right when the doors open. For one, directly on the side of the dashboard, there's Crater Man. He's right there looking at you as soon as the door opens to welcome you into the vehicle. But if you don't want to see him, well, you can banish him. You twist this little piece around him and it sort of closes up on Crater Man, just in case you don't want him there welcoming you into your vehicle. But he appears in other places too. Like, for example, on the door panel itself, the actual door release is Crater Man. You put your finger in here, you slide it down, and you can see Crater Man has made his way into the door release, which is a funny way to integrate him. Also worth pointing out, on the front door, you can see right below the door handle is this. That's a fire extinguisher, a very important thing you might want to have when you're going off-road deep into wherever, in case things get a little out of hand. You have that built in. Over on the passenger side, in the same spot, you have a first aid kit built in, which obviously is also an important thing to have if you're going off-road away from a lot of people. Having that first aid kit in place is a pretty cool idea. But anyway, beyond all that stuff you see right when you open the doors, let's move on to the rest of the interior, talk through things generally first. And I gotta say, this interior is pretty cool. It looks really awesome. A lot of different cool styling and design elements all throughout this interior, which really match the rugged, off-roady, and very kind of standout look of the exterior. They did a great job bringing that inside, and this is a very cool place to be. And Hyundai told me the interior of this car was sort of supposed to throw off an adventurer vibe, where you have the seats acting as sort of the comfortable sleeping bag where you kind of want to be with your body, but the rest of this stuff looking like all the cool gear you might need for a serious adventure going somewhere, and sort of the two things combined for like your typical adventure, comfort and capability. More importantly, though, there are some truly crazy pieces to this interior, beginning with, well, this projection onto the windshield, which shows 4 different like things. It turns out those are the 4 different modes for this vehicle, and they are pretty much all kind of crazy. Let's start with the most regular of the modes, which is your drive mode. You select that, and then the base of the windshield is filled with a projection that shows kind of all of your usual driving stuff. So you can see here, for example, the gear that you're in, the speed that you're going, and a lot of different other drive-related items. Obviously, this is where your driver assist things would be, but it also shows like your elevation, your angles, all of that stuff kind of projected onto the base of the windshield, which is pretty cool. You will also notice here that you have your rear view mirror camera projections on this piece as well. So you can see on the driver's side, you have your driver's rear view mirror image, and over on the passenger side, obviously the passenger rear view mirror image, which goes along and accompanies all of your other driving mode features projected onto the base of the windshield. Pretty cool. Things get weirder from there. Your next interesting mode is game mode, and if you select that, you can then choose a character to play a game, and you can see the game is this one where you kind of have to jump between these platforms, and you get points if you can successfully jump between the different platforms without dying or losing a life, and you get 3 lives. And frankly, this game is more addicting than it sounds. You can jump, 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 and you do that by like tapping this little screen, and you can play your game while you're in game mode. And very cool to see the game being played instead of on a center screen, actually on a projection on the windshield. Your next interesting mode is called camping mode. This is an off-roader vehicle you're going to take camping, and so camping mode allows you to project onto the windshield, well, you can see right now, a campfire. You have it at the base of the windshield going across the entire thing, and it actually provides campfire sounds. Take a listen. But you don't just have to settle for a simple campfire. You can choose various other options as well. For instance, tap here and you get a night sky. Now that has replaced the campfire being projected at the base of your windshield. You can see a starry sky that also includes some shooting stars. And again, night sky sounds. Take a listen. And what if you don't want either of those? Another option for you is a nighttime rainstorm. You tap here and you are given a rainstorm graphic that now replaces the other stuff at the base of the windshield. You can see rain is falling, and of course it sounds like a nice cozy rainstorm while you're sitting here in the car in camping mode. But probably my very favorite of the 4 different modes for the vehicle is music mode, because it allows you to kind of be a DJ. What happens is it plays a song, and then you're tasked with adding in various musical sounds that you can select with these kind of 4 screens at the top of the dashboard, and you can choose where to put the sounds into the song to add a little bit more oomph or excitement or flavor to the song that's played. A DJ mode inside the car as well. Now obviously, except for driving mode, none of these modes would presumably be usable when you're actually driving the car, but they're cool things to do to kind of keep you occupied while you're stopped, switching between all of those cool different modes. And of course, there are other quirks as well. Let's start with the steering wheel, where you can see a pixelated display screen in the center that actually shows your current drive mode. So the drive mode doesn't just show up in a little icon in the gauge cluster. Instead, it's pixelated in a large lighted display in the center of the steering wheel that changes when you adjust the steering wheel buttons. All of those buttons correspond to different drive modes as well. In the center, you have this rather large array of controls, and this adjusts primarily your 4-wheel drive and off-road settings. You can see it changes your diff lock from on to front to rear, your 4-wheel drive, and various other off-road components are all adjusted and displayed in this large area in the center. In the very center, you have a compass, which of course shows your direction of travel, and that's also a pretty cool thing to have, a necessary component of an off-roader. Now, directly above all of your off-road controls in the center, you can see there are these 4 individual screens, which we used earlier to kind of mess with the different modes, music mode, game mode, etc. But when you're driving the car, the screens instead basically give you some information. So they show like your current 4-wheel drive, 2-wheel drive, they show your current coordinates, your angles. Basically, they would show some just general information, each screen displaying a different important, pertinent piece of information that you might want access to while you're driving, which is pretty neat. Now, below your central off-roading controls in the dashboard, you can see some fairly typical switches like you might expect a lot of vehicles would have. You have your climate controls here, fan speed, temperature, your heated seats, and also a rather large hazard light button in the very center in case you become a rather large hazard. Now, below all of this stuff, you can see another integration of our friend Crater Man. I guess this is the power lock unlock switch, and you can pull it to lock or unlock the doors, and it's Crater Man doing the locking and unlocking. Also visible in this area, you can see a couple of straps, these kind of copper colored straps in the center console. They look cool. They're intended to, I guess, kind of give a feeling of toughness in the car, and they too feature Crater Man, the center console ones, and you also have straps at each end of the dashboard that sort of give the look like they're holding up the dashboard and kind of adding sort of a rugged, tough feel to the car, which is kind of neat. And speaking of those straps throughout the interior, you will also notice that the seat belts are not your traditional seat belts, but instead they are harnesses, which is more important if you're going off-roading, having a true safety harness like this instead of your typical 3-point seat belt. And you can see here they have copper accents, specifically say Crater on them, really emphasizing the off-roadiness of the whole situation. Also worth pointing out in the interior, there's some interesting backlighting going on, and specifically, I like the lighting that's on the dashboard itself. You can see it's sort of inside of this metal mesh compartment, kind of giving off a cool ambient light both behind the steering wheel and over on the passenger side of the dashboard. Kind of a neat touch that adds a kind of a mood or a vibe to this interior. And speaking of lighting, let's look up for a second. The ceiling, a couple of cool elements up here. For one, the interior light is this pixelated piece, and you tap on it and it turns on a pixelated interior light. It almost looks like a cartoon item, but it works and it's pretty cool, and it's actually kind of fun to turn on and off. Another lighting element up here, you have switches for the search light. You can see there are 4 total switches, kind of 2 on each side, and they correspond to each individual light on the roof of the car, turning them on. Those smiley face lights that I showed you before, obviously giving you extra lighting capability when you're off-road on a dark trail. You will also see a rather large SOS handle here. This is to, I guess, access Hyundai's emergency services, and it's rather large because the chances of needing the services in the off-roader Crater are bigger than in other vehicles, or at least that's what I would guess. But anyway, next we move on to the back seat, which you can see is a 2-person rear seat, which also includes full harnesses, just like you had up front with the copper accents and the Crater spelled across the harness straps itself. Nothing particularly interesting or exciting in the back seat, although it is worth pointing out the floor mat you can see is this sort of terrain look like you had in the running boards when you climb in. And on the ceiling, you can see the ambient pixel light. Once again, it's dark, you tap on it, it turns on, and it looks very cool in back, just like it looked up front. And finally, we move back outside for a few other interesting details and quite possibly the quirkiest quirk of all. But let's start with those basics. Powertrain, you might be wondering, the Crater is full electric. It rides on the same platform as Hyundai's Ioniq 5 electric hatchback SUV situation. It's modified and improved a little bit for the Crater's off-road capabilities, but this is a full EV, no gas powertrain here, at least in concept. Also worth pointing out size. The Crater, you might be able to tell, is actually kind of small, and Hyundai told me that overall length is smaller than the Tucson, which is Hyundai's compact SUV. So even though this is an off-roader in the mold of like a 4Runner, a Bronco, it's actually quite a bit smaller than that, at least for a 4-door off-roader. As for the weirdest quirk of all, one of the weirdest quirks I have ever seen is that to accompany the Crater, Hyundai has also created a concept board game called Craterland, which you can see right here. And it's a board game where you move through the spaces like most other board games, and it's kind of an interesting Hyundai Crater companion piece. You'll notice that the dice for this board game is the pixelated smiley face guy from the auxiliary lights on the roof of the car. You roll it and move forward or backwards depending on what you roll. And the pieces for the game are little Hyundai craters that are in different colors that you can move around. It's all rather hilarious and ridiculous, but it sort of fits in with the image for the car. You're going camping, you're with your friends, you bring out Craterland and play a couple rounds. And so that's the Hyundai Crater. Right now, just a concept car, not for production, but given the success of other vehicles like this, the 4Runner, the Bronco, the Wrangler, you can imagine where Hyundai's mind is on a production version of this car. And frankly, I really hope they do it. This is so cool the way it looks, all the cool quirks and features. It would be a success, and I hope it comes to production. But right now, it's not straight legal. You can't drive it. It's just a concept car. And so we must settle for this full tour of the Crater's quirks and features.